Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Between Sessions with Berries. I'm excited to have our guest today, Alyssa Corso. She's a self-taught SEO consultant and Berries' very own SEO expert. Since 2019, she's helped healthcare companies and therapy practices grow their reach through smart, scalable SEO strategies without needing to spend thousands on ads. I love that part. She's led SEO at companies like Nourish and K Health. She speaks regularly at conferences like Brighton SEO and now supports Berries and our community of therapists with practical, therapist-friendly SEO advice. So if you've ever wondered how to get your private practice found online, this episode is packed with simple, high-impact steps to get you started. Alyssa, welcome. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Can you share a little bit about how you found your way into SEO and what made you want to focus on healthcare and mental health industry specifically with your SEO work that you do?
Yes, absolutely. I'm happy to. So back in 2019, I was just graduating college and working at a really small health tech startup. And I actually knew nothing about SEO, but we really wanted to try to grow the company organically without using a lot of ads. We were trying to kind of work in an agile kind of environment. So I started writing blog posts and alongside my team that was only really a couple of people. And over time, they started to rank. Then COVID hit and we were writing about COVID, thinking that nobody would really be able to find us, but just thought, let's try to put our knowledge to the test and put it on the website and see what happens. And it worked really, really well. We wrote about healthcare costs. We wrote about healthcare, or I guess healthcare things like urgent care, hospital visits, all of these really important things that are actually hard to find reliable information on. And from there, I really honed in on my skills. I then worked at K Health, and after K Health, I led SEO at Nourish and kept trying to replicate kind of these strategies that I've developed over time. And now I own my own consultancy and help healthcare startups and private practices to show up online without having to spend thousands and thousands of dollars. So that's really how I got started, and that's what I focus on.
Are you talking about your website copy or blog posts on the website? Which are you talking about? Or is it all of it? Because I feel like SEO is probably a combination of all of that is what you're referring to.
Yes, absolutely. It is a combination of all of it.
Okay.
It really depends on the goals of who I'm working with, the company that I'm working with, or the person that I'm working with. Sometimes, blog posts are really great with finding users who are searching long tail keywords. So those are keywords that have probably between 4 and 6 keywords within the search term, whereas short tail keywords might be something like find a or it would be therapist near me. Those might be better to optimize your homepage or create a landing page for a certain location. And that's of course different than a blog post and needs less information.
Gotcha. That makes perfect sense. And probably people are like, what? But this stuff's so important. I know you know all this stuff. It's amazing. And you're, as I said in the intro, you're Berries' in-house SEO expert, which I think is super cool. You're part of this Berries family that is just amazing. I love that. So what have you noticed that about therapists and what they think SEO is and what it actually means, versus what it means? Because I think maybe therapists don't have a full picture of what SEO exactly is. To help with marketing and all of that stuff. So maybe we could talk about what they think it is versus what it actually is. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the misconceptions around this is definitely the amount of time, money, and effort that needs to go into this.
Okay.
There definitely are different tiers, and that kind of goes into how much money you might want to put into it. But at the end of the day, anyone could optimize their website and probably should, in my opinion, even if you don't hire someone, maybe just having a baseline understanding of what it is. And you can easily do that through reading articles, watching YouTube videos, or taking a course, which honestly is not even always necessary. I think you can get a lot through just free information online. And and really just honing in on the basics. So the basics are headers on your website, making
Okay.
sure that your website is organized properly. So that means having an H1 or a header 1. That's like kind of your title of the page. And that's going to tell search engines and users what the page and website is about. So you can make that keyword rich without keyword stuffing. So maybe you're a therapist that sees patients in, we'll say, Tulsa, Oklahoma, just as an example. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe you want to make sure that people know that that's very important. That's a local aspect, and that should be in your header 1, for example. And then your other headers, H2, H3, and H4, it goes by a hierarchy, also very important. And they hold different weights. And they should also kind of give information about your services. Maybe you want to sprinkle in keywords about conditions that you focus on. So, anxiety, depression, OCD, things like conditions like that. And maybe you want to have those in there. Or maybe you want to talk about your approach, because people are pretty descriptive nowadays with searching for things. And maybe they're looking for, like inclusivity or other focuses that they're just looking for in care. Another big thing is insurance. That's another very big specialty that I focus on with my clients. Telehealth services covered by insurance. You can also talk about that on your website as well. So these are
Nice.
just a few examples that I wanted to mention because they are very important to search, but sometimes people don't know how to incorporate them into their website.
Mm-hmm. So that's such great advice. So if a therapist is actually literally starting from zero, maybe they've got access to the back end of their website or something, you would say the header, the H1, H2, H3, H4 would be like the absolute must-have SEO things that they should incorporate into their website if they're trying to do it on their own and get some SEO going for their website. Okay.
Yes, it's definitely the best starting point because you need to have the headers anyway. So just knowing how to make those optimized is such a good place to start. And then, something that I always tell people is you could always go back and change it. Nothing is set in stone. So if you think it sounds a little funny, or maybe it's meaning the copy sounds like a little awkward, because that could happen, when you're, even for me, when I create websites, or maybe your business has changed and you're kind of rebranding yourself, you could just always go back and change it. That's why it's almost like an elbow lift way to start.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So are there strategies around those headers? Because I feel like probably maybe therapists get bogged down this way, and I know I do even with my own copy. It's like,
Yeah.
how do I stand out, like from all the other EMDR therapists in Arkansas, that are doing the same type of work? Like, how do you make the headers specific to me so I'm getting noticed versus maybe some other EMDR therapist in Arkansas that might have the same header, like, because I feel like it's hard because there's only so much you can say in a header, right? So how do you like differentiate and make yourself stand out when you've just got this little bit of space to do this, if that makes sense? I mean, I know copywriting comes
Yes.
in, but just from an SEO expert, like, how would you do that?
Yes, it's a very good question. And I'm actually working on a personal like website on a project that I'm working on. And I was just running into this the other day. Even
Yeah.
see, so I'm like, what do I put in the header? So I think a really good place to start though is to really understand how you want to be perceived by people. And that is your branding, right? Like, so it's like,
Yeah.
do you want to be, show people that you're kind of like very approachable and or open-minded or friendly. And that's a really good place to start, because then even if it doesn't stand out right from other websites, at least you know that this is true to you. That's like what's most important, even if you're not like standing out, because honestly, like there's just like so many websites out there. There is going to be probably some overlap, and I even encourage people to take, not never steal, but sometimes take inspiration from
Hmm.
other websites, because maybe you like how it sounds and like kind of the feel of it. But so
Yeah.
it's you can take inspiration from other websites while also putting your own spin on it. And
Hmm.
then also just really another way to just simply stand out is to really explain exactly what you're offering, because you know that
Uh,
you're unique in that, right? Like you're unique in what you provide and your approach, and just trying to, and like it might take a couple of tries, but I think that's always a good place to start. I've even done it for my own SEO website. I think I'm on iteration, I don't even know, maybe 25. It's been
Yeah.
live for a while, but like I always come back and I say, you know what, this has changed about me, so I'm going to update the copy. So that's the approach that I take to try to stand out. And there's other ways to stand out, like colors and fonts and structure of your website. I personally use like a one-pager website, and I do feel like it makes my website pop a little bit more. You don't have to like navigate a bunch of pages. So I would say like even lean on other things that aren't even just SEO related.
That's really good advice. So to kind of summarize that, something like I'm an EMDR therapist in Arkansas that specializes in high performing sports related injuries or something like getting
Yeah.
really specific in your personal niche and what you do and what makes you different than every other EMDR therapist out there.
Exactly.
Got it. That's super helpful. Yeah, I think that can help anybody if they're just starting out and just want to like, how do I just get even started with this website? I think that's great advice. Yeah. So what are some of the common mistakes you see therapists making? Like somebody hires you to help them with their SEO. What are some common things that you see coming up that it's like, oh gosh, your website's never going to get found because you've got this, this, and this going on?
Yes. So honestly, the first thing that, because it's such a low lift thing not to, talk too much about headers, is the first thing that I tell people is to fix your headers, because you don't need a developer to help you with that. You don't need a copywriter. We just need to work together to make sure this is easy to understand. And also a lot of things that I, even like for companies that I work for as well, that the header structure is messed up, meaning like there's an H4 as the title. And usually those are just, structural changes. You just go into your CMS and highlight the text and change it to an H1, H2. It's very easy. So usually that's the first thing that I do, and it's the biggest mistake that I
Okay.
see. So that's the first thing that I'm checking and advising on. But
Nice.
then another thing though is another mistake that I see also is navigation and footer kind of mistake. So your
Okay.
navigation bar is, the main source of navigation usually at the top of a website, and there's like sometimes drop downs or ways to find other pages. And sometimes I'm working, I'll do a consulting call with a client, and we're talking about how their website's structured. And when I ask them, like, well, why is this page like at the top of your navigation bar? Like, can you tell me about it? And they'll say like, oh, that's not an important page. But we want to make sure that the important pages are easily findable in your navigation bar or footer, because what happens with those elements of the page is that that's a really strong way for how Google and other search engines find your pages, because everything is through a sitemap when when it's indexing or crawling your website. So they're kind of going through those links to find and also give weight to certain pages. So in
Okay.
your navigation and footer, we want to make sure you have like an about us page or an about me page. Maybe in that page you have things about your approach or about yourself, maybe your education and background. A blog is usually found in the navigation bar as well, because that shows how much information you know about this topic and that you're really the expert and can be trusted. And also
Mhm.
things like insurance coverage. Maybe you haven't, like, do I take insurance, FAQs, kind of these important things that even when you think through it aside from your website, like what do I want clients to know about me, those should be in your navigation and footer. And sometimes when I work with people, they are like, I just put like all my pages there, or I just kind of
Oh.
randomly put them in. That's a mistake, because we
Mm.
want to make sure they're reserved. Well, you can even have unimportant pages in there. It's just that we have to make sure that it makes sense. It makes sense for the
Yeah.
business.
Like it's not a
So
lot of like fluff or whatever for like for the crawling. Like if it looks like a bunch of
yes,
junk, I guess. Yeah, okay. That makes
exactly.
sense.
And you don't want to overwhelm it either, because user experience and SEO go hand in hand. So if you're kind of stuffing the navigation bar and footer with a bunch of links, it's very overwhelming for a user, and kind of like, where do I go, right? Like it's like you're kind of, should I go to the about us? Should I go to Like, what do I do now that I'm here? So we want to
Yeah.
make sure that it's clear and we're giving people the right information when they come to the website.
Gotcha. Okay. And I guess this kind of goes into a question I have about like Squarespace or Wix. I mean, I feel like a lot of therapists use those. They're like plug and play sort of websites that you can just go sign up and like put a template in and add some different things. What are the biggest things they should avoid with those sites? Those type of plug and play website things that are super easy to kind of, I don't know how easy they are. I've never used them, but to build out. I hear that most therapists like to use those because they're affordable and easier than like a WordPress site or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would avoid using a template that's overly complex. That's one thing. They are
Okay.
usually very easy to use, but sometimes, and I've actually done this, and again, it's myself before, where you kind of upload a template that looks really nice, but then there's a lot of things to maybe maintain. Maybe there are too many images in the template, and now you're always like you have to find like the right images for it, right? Or maybe there's a video component and it slows down your page, which can negatively impact your SEO as well. Usually it's fine. You can just compress it and it should be okay. But these are
Okay.
some things like do I feel comfortable working with a template? Because that's really with Wix or Squarespace or WordPress as well. Like, you're usually using a template if you're not technical, and that's completely fine. I actually encourage people to use those because they are great for people who are not technical or people who don't want to invest money into development services. I use them as well. So, and I would also just make sure that when you do use those tools, just to make sure that it's structured in a way that makes sense for your website as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So when does a therapist decide like, okay, I've kind of got this Squarespace website, I've got some plug and play templates, I think I've got my headers going. When did they make the decision like, okay, it's time to hire a development company, somebody like you that can come in and do like that next level kind of thing for a therapist? When is that decision point usually come into play with the therapist you work with?
That's a good question. So I would say a good a good time to start considering that is if you're reaching a point where you want to add more features to your website and you don't know how to do it. And
Okay.
that's actually also when I reach out to developers too, because I have added features to my own personal website because I don't know how to do it. And
Okay.
the theme, sorry, actually not the theme. When you use Wix or Squarespace, like usually there is a point where let's just say, for example, a therapist wants to add a component to their website where it can help a user see if they would be covered if you accept their insurance, just as an
Oh,
example.
okay. Okay.
That is too complex to probably, I don't want to speak like definitively,
Yeah.
but like it's
Yeah.
probably too complex. But I would say like another time to maybe start to consult with someone who's either an SEO consultant or a developer,
Mm-hmm.
depending on like what you're trying to do, is if maybe you want to create more pages to capture users who want to find you in a very specific way. So one
Okay.
way to do that is, I mentioned before, a local component of this where it's like
Mm-hmm.
find a therapist near me. Maybe you want to create a landing page dedicated to your location. So that way
Okay.
people can find you if they are in your general area and you want to market yourself that way. You might want to bring in someone to help you because it just depending on the whole website, it could be like a bit more complex.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then the SEO expert, I said developer, but I kind of mean like an SEO development person that can come in.
Yeah.
So if you've got this, you're building out these new location pages, that would be a good time to bring an SEO person in because I guess I'm guessing because then you know how to like research like keywords and like do that really in-depth stuff that
Yeah.
maybe we don't have the time for as therapists or even understand like how keywords rank and all of that. I'm assuming and then that's where your expertise would come in to figure out like what exactly are the best keywords for right now with what's going on in the world and that kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. So
Okay.
I'll just give a quick overview of like what someone like me like would help with, which would be like
Okay.
finding the keywords. So say like, is this even worth doing, right? Like, do we want, like, does this make sense based on how many people are searching for it, what your competition looks like for these keywords? Because sometimes they're very competitive. It might not make sense for your website to go after it right now, but it might make more sense in the future. What kind of blog posts you can create to support pages like that. And if there are any other local components you can add to a page. For example, if you wanted to put your kind of like a Google Map embed, that can help with SEO. Or if you wanted to put some content on the page, I can help advise on like what kind of content should be in there.
Nice. Okay, that's great. Yeah, so helpful. So is there a website that you like Squarespace or Wix or whatever that you would recommend therapists start with if they're just trying to like start with the website and then hire somebody like you in the back end to come help with the SEO later? Like, what would you recommend is the easiest way to get started?
Yeah. I have liked WordPress in the past because you can easily use plugins for SEO or even like affiliate links and kind of things if you wanted to more like monetize your website. So WordPress has a lot of great plugins on that front that are also free.
Okay.
But also though, I've worked with quite a few people who have had really good experiences with Wix and Squarespace.
Okay.
So I would say my advice would be to choose one that you feel comfortable with and know that in the future you can like migrate your website over to something that's a little bit more advanced. Like I've been using Webflow and Framer more often. Nowadays, it's a bit more, they just have a bit more features in terms of building a website with, you could add code to it and things like that.
Nice.
But I would say, kind of search around, see what feels good to you, and then know that you can change in the future.
Nice. Now, do you recommend, because part of what we do with Berries is the Berries user is a little more tech savvy, maybe a little more AI friendly. Do you recommend like try to use ChatGPT or something like that to help with your SEO strategies? Or do you have any like tips around that, how to help people do that if they're not ready to hire somebody like you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can definitely use ChatGPT to kind of give you some guidance around it. I think this goes for a lot of things. Like, I don't know if I necessarily use it straight from ChatGPT, but these are ways that I would recommend using it for inspiration. So you could tell it like, I'm a therapist located in this area. I'm creating a homepage. I want to include these components. You can use it for guidance for copy and tell like, the only thing with the SEO copy is that it kind of tends to over optimize or make it sound very awkward. Yeah, cheesy. So I would say like, take that with a grain of salt, but like it does give you some starting points. And then when it comes to the actual optimization, I have found that it can give you some good suggestions, but that's another thing that I would say, have that baseline understanding by doing your own research, because sometimes it'll tell you to kind of do things or like change certain things on your pages. Whereas like, I would say like, no, that's not right yet.
Yeah.
because then a really important thing to keep in mind is that it only, like, even if you give it the most context possible, it still only has that context about you. And it's trying to kind of plug it in with what it knows about SEO, which actually I think is like sometimes pretty good. Like, I can't lie, but it's just, you have to like, maybe, think of it holistically and maybe even just ask like someone that that knows like a little bit more about SEO, like, what do you think of this general strategy, instead of kind of going all in, because your time is valuable, of course, and you don't want to spend so much time implementing things like, just as an example, like you might not want to like be buying or like trying to get a bunch of backlinks to your website if there are other like free and like low-hanging fruits that you can do before that. And there's also like some risk that comes along with backlinks as well. So those would be my suggestions.
Yeah. Because I always hear things about like, I guess people don't really do this as much anymore, but like keyword stuffing, like that was a thing, right? Where people would maybe use ChatGPT to stuff popular keywords into a blog post, and then you like read the blog post and it's kind of like gibberish, It's like,
exactly,
this isn't even helpful. It's just like a bunch of junk to to like attract Google or whatever. But I guess Google's caught on to that stuff too, right? And AI produced things.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's spammy. So even if for some reason it works in the short term, you'll likely get penalized in the long term, and you risk your website being removed from Google, or you risk losing a lot of traffic in a Google algorithm update.
Okay, gotcha. That's a good tip. So when we're doing these podcasts, I always like to do just kind of like lightning round questions, a few questions at the end just to like get your opinion about some things. So if there was one SEO tool that you recommended or a plugin that you would recommend for beginners, what would that be? Like that one kind of like go use this. This would be my highly most recommended one for you, like with SEO stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would recommend a starter plan with Ahrefs. So Ahrefs is a keyword research tool that I personally have been using for years, and they have this plan that is pretty affordable. I believe it's around $40 a month, and it's really good for someone who's like a private practice, like therapist, because it kind of gives you enough information that you can use to do keyword research strategy, take a look at how your website is performing, and also even see what your competitors are ranking for as well. So that's a good starting point in my opinion. And it's also a great way to start to see like if you publish blog posts like in the last 3 months, like how they're performing and how they're maybe like creeping up in rankings. But also that's a paid tool, but I would also recommend that everyone sets up Google Search Console for their website. Usually if you're using something like Squarespace or Wix, like they have like an easy way to set it up by putting like a code snippet in your website. And that, I think that's free, like I said, and you can also just take a look at how your website's performing there as well.
Okay. That's excellent. Thank you. And best advice you've heard for building online visibility in 2025 as an SEO expert.
Yeah. So this is actually my advice all the time, and not just in 2025. I think since I've started doing SEO, this is my advice, and it just still is my number one thing, which is to not write for search engines, to write for people, because ultimately, whether you're a therapist or another type of clinician, or if you're in different types of like medical practices, the end goal is always to make sure that the person that's reading it is getting the best possible information and that they can make a good decision based on their unique situation. So I always say, just because SEO has changed quite a bit, especially in 2025 because of AI and other advancements in search results and things like that, we want to make sure that that is still like the bar, and that's what we're doing. And honestly, I make sure that effort is there for all of my clients, and I consistently still see the result. So that's why I say that's my advice. And I think it'll always be my advice, but I think it's very, very important. And that's the type of quality that I try to bring to everyone that I work with.
Yeah, gotcha. I love that. And is there one SEO myth that you wish would go away forever? That you hear all the time.
I think one of them is that, SEO has to take, years to kind of.
Oh, good one.
Yeah, so it's like, and, yes, SEO can take time, because that's like the notable thing that people have probably heard a lot, right? SEO just takes time. It depends, like when she'll see results. But I don't necessarily think that has to be true. You can use these tools like I've mentioned, Ahrefs, Google Search Console. If you have Google Analytics set up, you can use these tools to see results very quickly. I'm not saying you're going to go from like 0 visits to 1 million visits in like 3 weeks, but you can see incremental changes. And that's what we've seen, honestly, at Berries as well, where, you're investing in SEO and you're doing the right things. You have like this understanding of it. Maybe you're working with a consultant or an agency, and you can see how things have changed from like when you first started working with them or first started investing in it to maybe it takes like a month or two. And you really want to make sure that you're able to see those things. So we're talking increase in clicks, increase in impressions. So how many people are clicking on your website from Google or seeing it in search results, or just general ranking changes, which is what Google Search Console and Ahrefs can help you see. So, going from ranking in the 19th position to maybe the 5th position. So that would indicate you're on the first page. So changes like that can help you to understand like where your money is or time is going, and it's very, very important. It's a myth. Like, my advice is like, don't let people tell you that you have to wait like 3 months to see anything. I put together monthly reports for my clients so that they can easily see like this is what happened in just a month.
Nice.
And not everyone does that, but it's very important to me that I see the visibility, like it's visible to me, and that it's also visible to the client or person that I'm working with.
That's amazing. And I'm sure that like informs your decisions as well as the SEO expert. It's like, gosh, we haven't seen any movement here, or here, but I'm sure you see movement generally. But if I haven't seen it, maybe we need to tweak this or move this around or add another blog post about this that did really well, like that kind of information. Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%.
That's awesome. Alyssa, thank you so much. This is so helpful. I think any new therapist or just somebody that needs to bump up their SEO, this is going to help a ton. So how do people find you if they want to work with you or learn about your services?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have a website, alyssacorso.com, where you can send me a message, or even if you have questions about SEO, you could just send me an email or message me on LinkedIn. I also that's actually also where I'm most probably active, on LinkedIn, if you just search my name, Alyssa Corso. So yeah, if you have questions about SEO, I'm happy to answer them. Or if you wanted to set up a call, I'm happy to answer questions.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time today. It's been a pleasure hearing about this and learning about everything that you do.